Okay, so now you've been through PEMDAS and you know your order of operations. And along comes your algebra teacher and she throws letters into the mix. What kind of nonsense is that? Letters? You can't add and subtract letters. This is letters thing. Okay, this is the beginning of the real deal stuff. So, you know through PEMDAS that should you ever be handed this problem, what you would do, order of operations says you solve what's in the exponents first, right? So you do 4 minus 3. You do your 4 minus 3 first, and you wind up with 5 times 1, right? 5 times 1, and that equals 5, and life is happy, and you're happy, and your teacher is happy, and moving right along. But what if you were given this? There you go. 5 parentheses 4 minus x. So you go along and go, okay, well, I just go 4 minus x. 4 minus x. 4 minus some number that I don't know? Yeah, there's a problem there. Okay, there's a simple way that you handle it. It's called the distributive property. And I sort of think of it as the last piece of PEMDAS that they didn't tell you in middle school. Or maybe they did, depends on where you went to middle school, but that's beside the point. But I think of it as an extension of PEMDAS. Distributive property, if you think about the word distribute means to kind of spread out and share, okay? So if I were to, let's say, put a pan of brownies down and hand you a bag of chocolate chips and say, distribute these chocolate chips across the brownies. What are you going to do? You're going to take your bag of chocolate chips and pour them all over the brownies, right? You're going to distribute them. You're going to spread it out and share it. Okay, distributive property is simply about taking this first number outside of the parentheses, the one that you would normally multiply the answer to, and sharing it with whatever's inside the parentheses, okay? So using the distributive property is not that difficult. You're still going to honor this little bit here. 5 parentheses means to multiply. So it means you're going to multiply everything in the parentheses by this 5. So if you were going to do my method, which is rewriting every step, it would turn out to look like this to get rid of your parentheses. You'd have 5 times 4 minus 5 times x. There you go, okay? It's not that tough. 5 times, and then from that point on, you just go ahead and solve. Well, 5 times 4 is pretty straightforward. 5 times 4 is 20. You keep the minus sign just like you normally would bring whatever signs, operation signs you have. You're going to bring them straight down. 5 times 4 is 20 minus 5 times x. Well, you can't really solve 5 times x, can you? You can't multiply 5 times some number you don't know. So you can either leave it, technically you really could just leave it 5 times x and it would be okay. But in algebra, remember we said a long time ago, math people don't like to write. They actually like things very clean and simple. So what they do is they take that dot out, and you may remember that way back in the operations video, we talked about the fact that when there's a number and a letter smushed together, it means multiply. This is actually a really important concept for you to start to get used to, because it's going to affect us shortly when we start working with solving equations for one unknown letter, one single variable. So, having done that, our expression, and it's called an expression, even though there's an equal sign there, there's nothing on the other side, I can't figure out what that x is. That's a story for another day. But our expression now reads 20 minus 5x. And that's all you do. It's really simple. Distributive property shouldn't give you any difficulty. The big thing you have to remember is remember what the word distribute means. It means to spread out and share. So whatever number is going to be outside of your parentheses box, you're going to go ahead and multiply everything inside the parentheses. And yes, it can get a little more complicated. Let me show you. So for instance, you could have you could go ahead actually have an expression that looks like this. And in this case, you have to kind of remember what PEMDAS would say, right? If you were going through the order of operations, you start with parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, and then there's that little distributive property at the very end, okay? So according to PEMDAS, I've got to solve what I can in the exponents here. So 4 minus 3 is 1. Okay, so this problem now becomes 10 parentheses 1 plus x, close parentheses. Okay, not very difficult. Now I can't combine anything else in the parentheses to get rid of it. Now I go ahead and I distribute my 10. I share it with everything in the parentheses. So I'm going to wind up with 10 times 1 and 10 times x. Just like that, okay? I shared my 10 with my 1 and my 10 with my x. 10 times 1 is 10. 10 times x is 10x. So your new expression will look like 10 plus 10x. Just like that, okay? Remember, as we're moving through algebra, you're going to start seeing more and more letters used as placeholders. Letters are specific, okay? We can create a problem with more than one letter, meaning we have more than one unknown number. That's why we use the letters. But for all we care, really, for us, because we're not really math people, for all we care, I could, instead of that x, I could put a question mark, because all the x means is I don't know what this number really should be. There you have it. Don't let the letters freak you out. They're just placeholders. Don't forget, as you're moving through the order of operations, that there's that little tag at the end called distributive property, which just means you're going to share whatever number's outside the parentheses with everything that's inside the parentheses. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon.